Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host. My guest this evening is Department of Labor Commissioner Scott Jackson. Scott, welcome.
Good to be here, Pete.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good, thanks.
Fantastic.
I'm good. So, last time you were on with me, that you held another office in the state of Connecticut, and since you've last been on with me, you've become Commissioner of the Department of Labor for the state. So as Commissioner of the Department of Labor, what exactly do you do?
Well, that's a fantastic question, Pete.
All right.
And every day I learn something new that I didn't know walking in the door. Last time I was on your show, I was the mayor of the great town of Hamden, Connecticut.
Yes, you were.
Shortly thereafter, I went to the Office of Policy and Management, where I was, had an obscure title, Undersecretary for Intergovernmental Policy. And I was there for a little less than a year before the governor called and asked if I would come to the Department of Labor, where the commissioner had just retired.
Yeah.
So it's been a learning enterprise. I've been there since February, and it's a great department with a lot of great people who have a lot of great experience and really want to do the right thing by their neighbors every single day. So that's been great. But sometimes in government, you just have to change the way you operate and change the way you deliver services.
Exactly.
And so without losing any of the institutional memory that exists, I think the reason the governor brought me and my deputy commissioner, Kurt Westby, came on at the same time, both of us from outside of the department, to really kind of look at the way things were being managed and the long-term direction of the agency.
I guess, what is the long-term direction of the agency?
Well, the agency has a couple of different functions. It manages the unemployment system, which is critical. People who are having their worst day are calling our department every day. We also protect workers through our wage and workplace security program. So, if your boss isn't paying you, we're the folks you call to protect you. If you're operating in an unsafe work environment, we're the folks you call. And also we have an employment services division that really tries to connect people to jobs. And so those are run through our American Job Centers that are situated throughout the state of Connecticut. So in major functions, that's what we do. I think that's how we're known to the customers. And so we have that public facing component.
I was gonna say, and how are things going so far?
You know what? They're going okay. The department had a tough time last year. Because of the way that the unemployment side of the house is funded. The higher your unemployment, the more money the federal government gives you to pay for it. Because our employment rate had dropped so much, the funds disappeared, and so we ended up having to lay off about 100 people. And on a staff of 800, that's a pretty big impact. And if you look over, a couple of decades, the department has gone from about 1,200 people to around 700. So we're still trying to deliver the same broad services and deliver them at a high level, but we're really doing it with 500 less people than we did a couple of decades ago.
And I was going to say that I'm sure that's a challenge for you guys in the organization and the agency.
It is, and so we have to look at it differently, right? We have to play the hand that we are dealt, and this is our hand, and so we have to do a couple of things. We have to enhance our use of technology. One of our major limitations in the unemployment insurance side of the house is the age of the computer system that manages this massive amount of data. That system is about as old as we are.
Oh boy.
Which from computer and data standards makes it pretty old.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we're working on a modernization program to try to move that forward, but it's very complicated because of a lot of factors, including the amount of data that it needs to maintain, the security requirements, because it is there's federal tax information, individuals' information that's incorporated within that system, so it has to meet certain thresholds for security, and it has to be a system that we can connect with different other systems, not only within the Department of Labor, but ideally out there in the world, so that the state can provide a much more seamless delivery of services for people who are in different phases of their life and of their experience. So that modernization project, as we call it,
Okay.
it's a couple of years in the making, and it'll be a couple of years before we're done. But we really have to do it because, frankly, some of our service levels, we can't justify them to our friends and neighbors who need the service.
Right.
If you call in during a peak period in January for unemployment, you just lost your job. You might get a message that the whole time is a few hours, and we've got to be able to do better. And moving into a different computer environment is part of that. But it's a very complicated move forward.
I was going to say, how's the move going so far?
It's going. It's. I still have sort of the executive
Right.
mindset where I say just go, 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 go.
Exactly.
Go. But we're actually doing this as a project with a couple of different states,
Okay.
with Mississippi, Maine, and Rhode Island.
Okay.
And so we have to work together in a very cooperative sort of a way, and it obviously it takes longer than I want it to take,
Exactly.
but it's scheduled to take a couple of years from now. Knock wood, we haven't had any problems thus far.
Okay.
But until we get rid of those wait times, I'm not going to be satisfied.
No. And typically, what are some of the wait times? Are they?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
So there are two peak seasons. One sort of when the construction season in Connecticut ends, so wintertime.
Yep.
And then summertime when the schools and school bus
Yep.
drivers and everyone else. So we're coming back into another peak season.
Right.
But it could literally be a couple of hours if you call up. Now we've implemented a couple of things to try to address that. We have this great feature called virtual hold, where it says, okay, if you need to file an initial claim for unemployment,
Right.
You can wait for 2 hours, or you can punch in what time you want us to call you back.
Aha. Okay. It's like
And we hit that mark all the time. I mean, we're in the high 99% in terms of meeting that time. If you say call me at 2:30, we'll call you at 2:30. A lot of people don't believe it though, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure if my mother would buy it if she said, call me back at 2:30.
Yeah, sure.
And so some people won't do that.
No, of course
or
not.
haven't done that. But one of the messages we have to get out is that it actually does work.
It does.
It really works. We promise. We're also rolling out an internet-based system for folks, and this is going to be brand new for us.
All right.
And so there may be some kinks in the system. So we're not putting this on the sides of buses right
No,
now.
not yet.
But in a few weeks, you'll be able to go to our website and you'll see a button that says First Time Filer. And you can hit that button and you can file your initial claim online, which we think will divert from that phone system and give us a better chance to keep those wait times down.
Now, on your website, what types of information can the general member of the public find?
Oh, you can find
Everything.
anything and everything. One of the functions that we have that I didn't mention
Yes.
was we have a research and data compartment too. A bunch of really smart economists and statisticians who crunch a
Numbers.
series of numbers regarding the labor market, regarding growth fields,
Okay.
projections for fields that are increasing employment or decreasing employment,
Okay.
and there's really a lot of fascinating stuff. I'll tell you one of the things that the numbers clearly say is around manufacturing.
Okay.
And what the numbers say is that the average age of employees engaged in the manufacturing field in Connecticut is high. It's in the 60s.
Really?
There is going to be a hiring need for manufacturing in the state of Connecticut in the coming years.
Okay.
And so when you hear us at the Department of Labor and the Department of Economic and Community Development and all the economic development folks talking about manufacturing, that's the reason. It's because the numbers say that is going to need qualified people in the coming years. And it's not a field where you can walk in and know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly.
Right. You need experience. So we push apprenticeships in that arena, and other training programs through the technical high schools and community colleges. If people are sort of scratching their heads out there wondering, why does everybody keep talking about manufacturing? That's the reason.
And you think that the program's going to work well?
Well, I know it's working well. We have 6,200 registered apprentices statewide.
Oh my goodness.
And nearly 1,000 employer partners in that arena. But we also have to, we have to make it clear to kids coming up, not only high school, but junior high and middle school age too, that manufacturing isn't what it used to be.
No.
It's safe.
Right.
It's clean. It's incredibly complicated and requires, a lot of cognitive ability. This is a new era, and we want people to think about it like that. And so we continually push that.
Excellent. Scott Jackson, would you mind sticking around for another segment?
Absolutely.
We'll be right back.
Calls me googly eyes.
You know you're beautiful, right? You know that?
Even you are beautiful. I got bullied for wearing glasses. Share if you're against bullying.
We put it out there, just took off. 3 million people have shared this post. Don't let bullies get you down. I stand with you. Our whole family's wearing glasses. I wear glasses and I'm proud.
I even have the army on my team.
All the kind comments brought my child joy. I don't feel thank you is enough.
Next.
And welcome back to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. Sitting here with Scott Jackson. Scott, welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Scott, let's talk about priorities of the agency.
Well, we started talking about it a little bit
with
this modernization
let's get into
project.
it a little bit
I mean,
more.
that is our Achilles heel right now. That is our front door for a lot of people, and we have to do a lot better in providing services in a timely fashion there. We also have to look at our partnerships in a slightly different way, right? So, like I said, we had 1,200 people, now we have 700, and yet we're still trying to deliver the same services.
Right.
It can't happen. So particularly our employment services, our job connections, we need partners, and our partners are workforce development boards. Well, they used to be workforce development boards, and then were workforce investment boards. Now they're back to workforce development boards.
All right.
So I just call them the boards,
That's
so everyone knows what I'm talking about.
That works.
And there are 5 across the state who cover every town and city in the state of Connecticut.
All right.
And we have to work on our partnerships with them. And so that's one of the things that I think at the commissioner's level needs to be done. And so the deputy commissioner and I have, I think, been working very hard to create new and open relationships with the workforce development boards, so we can make sure that the people who are trying to serve, the people who walk into an American Job Center somewhere in Connecticut, get the highest level of service possible. So those are our 2 high priorities for me.
And you said there's 5 workforce development boards across the state. What do they do?
Well, they're the ones who actually do the heavy lifting of sitting one-on-one with people and saying, okay, let's look at your resume.
All right.
Let's see what's on it. Let's see what things we can tweak with your resume. Let's talk about what your career goals are. And we've just rolled out a new data system called Connecticut Hires, CT Hires, which is really a job matching piece of software that's in use in 20 other states, where both employees and employers register. And so the employers say, I'm looking for an accountant. Right. And the system can send to them all of the accountants who meet that qualification.
Very nice. Very cool. Now, what are some of the strengths of the agency?
The agency has number one strength,
and that
is its people. It's fascinating I've been in government in one way, shape, or form for 22 years.
All right.
And I've never seen the level of dedication and devotion within a specific workforce.
Okay.
So, and here's what I mean.
Yeah.
We make choices every day. We make choices about where we're going to work and if we're going to stay or if we're going to go.
Right.
It's hard to find, outside of the deputy commissioner and me, it's hard to find somebody in the Department of Labor who has less than 20 years of service.
Really?
They've chosen to stay there, not for months, not for years, but for decades. My executive assistant that I work closely with has almost 40 years in.
Okay.
And she is not even the most senior person in my office. So
Really?
that's you know, you can't buy that level of dedication.
No, of course
And
not.
so working with working off of the strengths and information and institutional knowledge that is resident within our not only our main building but all of our satellites across the state. That's the biggest strength of the agency. What I'd like to also say is that we have federal partners, United States Department of Labor,
Okay.
a regional office out of Boston and out of DC. And our managers have extraordinarily good relationships with their counterparts in those offices, which allows us to really position ourselves to promote innovative programming that we're offering, to seek additional funding as necessary to make these programs reality, and having people who sort of understand the way to make government work has truly been a godsend to me as a manager in a new space.
Exactly. Now, as far as challenges that the agency faces, what are some of the challenges that you guys face?
Well, without getting too boring and technical.
All right, we can get boring and technical. That's fine.
Well, you know me, Pete. I can get boring and technical
Yes, you
really
can.
quickly.
Go for it.
We're in the transitional phase of the overarching federal legislation.
Okay.
It's going from the Workforce Investment Act, which we call WIA,
Okay.
to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, which we call WIOA.
Okay.
And so that change in federal framework, it makes us work a little bit differently. And so right now, a lot of our folks, our frontline folks, are kind of figuring out the processes necessary to get the outcomes we want, which is connecting people to jobs, at the same time that they're doing the process correctly to conform to federal law. Now, if you ask me, and I've told everyone, I think this, I am more interested in the outcomes than the processes.
Right.
If you get great outcomes and you need my help supporting the process by which you got there, that's my job. That's why I was hired. But we want to connect people to employment. We want to help build family wealth. And I like the I in WIO, the innovation. And sometimes innovation, makes people scared, right? It's a change.
Exactly.
It's doing things differently.
Right.
I know this way, I don't know that way. But I think that right now, we have to try to do things differently. Government is evolving, and we have to be a part of that.
Exactly. Now, as far as the agency goes, you oversee how many people?
About 700 direct employees of the Department of Labor.
All right.
But then we also have our partners around the state who have between a couple of dozen and about 80 employees, depending on where you
Like
are.
the satellite offices.
Right, but they don't actually work for us, but we work with them.
Gotcha.
And one of the things that we're trying to do is trying to figure out ways. Usually I'm wearing a badge around my neck that says, "Hi, I'm Scott. I'm from the Department of Labor." And I have to remember because it gets me into the building in the morning. Our partners also wear badges who say, "I'm with
The Department
Workforce
of
Alliance."
Yeah.
I'm with, and we want someone walking in the door not to know, that to be invisible to them. You walk in the door of one of our job centers and say, I'd like to increase my skills so I can get a job or get a better job.
Right.
We just want you to get that service. We don't want you to worry about who you're talking to. So that's one thing that we're working on.
What are some other things you're working on?
My goodness. I think that we need to push out our data sets
Yeah.
a little bit more aggressively. Like I said, we have a bunch of smart people in our research and data unit
Right.
who think about different ways of putting it together.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to give over the keys and push out raw data so that other people who are in other industries, businesses, or think differently can look at it, analyze it in different ways, and provide us perhaps different information as to what we might want to do in terms of promoting sectors of the economy. At the same time, one of the, I mentioned that's one of the strengths of the agency is that there's so many people who have been there for 30, 40 years.
Right.
That also means that they're retiring. No one works forever.
No. Well,
And so, we have to plan our leadership succession in a couple of our different divisions as well, which is, that's difficult because they're all great people and you hate to see them go. But
Exactly.
at the same time, they've earned it.
Exactly.
And you have to let them go and wish them, sort of fair winds and following seas. But how we set ourselves up to make sure that there's no degradation of our service.
Mm-hmm.
That's the job that we have to do in our wing.
I was going to say, of all the people that retire, I'm sure once they retire, especially someone in your department or your agency, and you have to try to fill their shoes, I'm sure it's not an easy job with somebody that's been there that long.
It absolutely is not, and you don't even know what you're missing until you're missing it.
Really?
It's that type of a scenario. But as my grandma Lula used to say, one monkey don't stop the show. And so we have to make sure that, organizationally, one of the principles that will keep us sound is that we encourage data transfer among people. We want people to know what other folks are doing. In some places, people are very protective of that because, they think it makes them indispensable. But what really makes you indispensable is being really good at your job and sharing how you do your job with other people so that no matter what happens, the organization is able to withstand you not only retiring, but there's some places where when someone takes a vacation, everything stops and things fall down.
Exactly.
And we can't do that. Like I said, people are calling us when they're in an emergency situation. They just lost their job. I need to know how I'm going to make my rent.
Exactly.
When they pick up the phone, we have to be there on the other end with a credible answer. And so we all have to be part of the same team with the same information to do that effectively.
Now, I'm assuming with the position that you're in, you're also out in the field, stopping by, seeing everybody.
I certainly try to be. It is a managerial position.
Okay.
There's a lot to do in the office. There's a lot of emails and phone calls and everything else that you would expect. But I do think that it takes, the commissioner needs to be actively engaged in delivering the organizational message to everyone, which can be difficult if you have, sites far away.
Right.
We got a dozen or so people in Danielson, Connecticut, and they have to be connected just like everybody in Wethersfield, right? So I do think that it's important, and the deputy commissioner and I have been trying to make a distinct effort to spend some time in the field offices.
And I'm sure they're appreciative when you show up to. Well,
I don't know. You'd have to ask one of them. I don't like to put words in people's mouths.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, we're not. I mean, we're not. We're there to thank them for their hard work and support them. We're not there to look over their shoulder and micromanage them. And I think they see that.
Exactly. Now, are there differences between Scott Jackson, where you are now, as far as Scott Jackson when you were mayor of the town of Hampden?
Yes. And the biggest difference probably has to do with how I got here.
Okay.
I worked in Hampden for years,
right,
and served on local boards and commissions before I ever worked in Hampden. And so I was on boards and commissions. I was a staff member, community development staff, and then mayor's office staff before I was mayor. I literally knew how everything worked.
Really?
And I was tech support at times. I'm very good at Excel. So if people had Excel questions, they might just call me. And so
Exactly.
I had a very clear understanding of how the machinery worked. And coming into labor cold, I don't have that idea, or the same
Right.
the same overall vision of how the parts work. And so, probably the first 90 days was really just trying to figure out what the machine looked like, not even how it worked, but what it looked like. And so, we spent our time doing that. Kurt and I came on at the same time, so we were able to kind of do it together, and then compare notes afterwards and say, was that what I thought it was?
Yeah, exactly. Did I really do that?
So we did that, and we're kind of now transitioning into the production phase, trying to make the machine spit out the things that we wanted to spit out on the timeline that we wanted to.
Exactly. Things are going well, though?
Things are going well. It's been, honestly, again, going back those 22 years, it's probably the most fun I've had in a job in the whole time.
Now, do you still keep in touch with the mayor?
Oh yes, we text all the time.
All right.
And mayor is a club. It's kind of a big club in Connecticut. There are 169
Yeah,
chief elected
exactly.
officials, but there are several mayors, former mayors, future mayors.
Exactly.
We talk all the time because sometimes
Exactly.
only someone who's been in that seat can understand what you're going through at any given time.
Exactly. Scott Jackson,
Mr. Mezzetti, great to see you.
you too. On behalf of Scott, I'm Pete. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next week.